Let's be real as fuck about life, real estate, and entrepreneurship. Hi, I'm Julie Chin. You can call me Jules. The Real as Fuck brand is all about providing tools and resources to help new and struggling agents succeed. I share my personal experience not only as a new real estate agent, but also how I overcame the odds starting out as a single mom with a mountain of debt and a ton of self-doubt. Welcome to the Real as Fuck podcast. I'm your host, Julie Chin. Thank you for joining us. And today we have Stephanie Wildoner here with us. Thanks for hopping on board and getting ready to share and educate, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.
So, can you give our listeners a little background so they have a better sense? Because you've just got such a wheelhouse behind you. I feel like you've just done so much.
I can. So I moved to the Conway area back when, I don't know, 2010, I believe it was. And I had no idea about a tourist town. I never lived in one. I only visited one. And I had a very small cleaning company back then and was dealing with my husband who was terminally ill. And when he passed away, I decided to start the cleaning business a little stronger instead of going back to college. And it just kind of one thing led to another where Airbnb type things were just taking off. I didn't even, I don't even think Airbnb was up and running then. I can't remember. And I had owners that wanted to have me manage their property. And back then, I don't think that's the same way now, but you had to have your real estate license in order to do that. And a real estate class opened up down the road, and I said, what the heck? Let's go do it. And that's how I became a real estate agent. So I have focused my whole business on short-term rental owners, people that are buying homes to rent out exclusively. I've never dealt with a first-time home buyer. I've never done a VA, that type of thing. I've just dealt with investors.
Very cool. That must be fun, though.
It is very fun. Yeah. It is fun. When someone comes to you with a dream of wanting
Mm.
to own that second home and you can help make that happen and not just get them in the house, but get them into something that can give them some side money along the way and, pay, whether it's just paying their mortgage or actually making income, it's really fun.
Well, I bet within that you've dealt with sort of a first time investment buyer.
Yes. Yes. So I guess, yeah, you could say first time buyer in that sense.
First time something.
Yeah, and they'll come to you, and sometimes there's a lot of education that goes into buying that home. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to get into it was I would have someone call me up to manage their property because I do that as well. And I would go to their house and just walk in, and my stomach would drop because it was just not a house that was going to work for what they had bought it for. So I figured becoming an agent and being able to help them right from their first search was going to
Mm,
serve them a lot better than coming in behind after they bought a house.
right. Now, how do you educate them? Like, what's involved when you're working specifically with an investor want to be? I think
So
might be a
if
good way to put it.
it's air when they first come and say, I'm looking to buy a vacation home, I find out what it is they want. Are they just looking for a second home to retire in someday and they want it to pay for itself until that happens? Or are they looking to actually make money off of that and be completely hands off? Because it's a totally different direction. So I find that out first, and based off of that is where we go with it. Obviously, the second homeowner that wants to retire, it's going to be more about what they want in a house long term versus an investor. It's going to be all about what does well for a guest. So when I go into a house, I can walk in the door and instantly know if the layout's going to work, if the room size is going to work, the bathroom count, and all of those things. So helping them with that side of it and just really knowing what their nightly rate may be, what amenities they might have, what part of town will work for them. So it's all of those things, also knowing regulations and what homeowners associations may not allow them, or if there's chatter going on in the background that they're planning on banning them. Those are all
Mm-hmm.
things that a buyer needs to know.
Which that environment's changed so much
Yes, it
over
really
the
has.
years, and I would assume that it's quite challenging to keep up with all the details because from town to town it varies, let
Yeah.
alone dealing with HOAs.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, you said something, and I've actually never thought about it, so I'm curious. How does a layout of the home impact whether or not it'll be a good rental?
So let's just take the whole pandemic situation that happened. Since then, guests really want a multi-level property where the adults can be upstairs and the kids can be downstairs playing games and sleeping, that kind of thing. If you have a house, sometimes they'll have a lot of room size where you can maybe fit a lot of beds, but you only have one bathroom. So that
Mm-hmm.
won't work, um, because you can't put 12 guests in a house with only one bathroom.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, just figuring out how the living room will look, how you can get the bed set up. If it's too small to really accommodate a king size bed, which is something that would make your house more likely to rent. Just those kind of factors.
Got you. And so you sit down with that first time investor and you go over all of that. What would be a good way for a new agent who's wanting to start navigating this part of the industry a little bit? What would
I
you
would
suggest?
say that if you're working with someone who really wants to buy a short-term rental, you don't necessarily have to know all of the answers, but you need to know where to find the answers. So you should be familiar with whatever groups are out there that can direct them. Um, there's, in our area, there's a responsible rental group, but just knowing your resources that you can give this buyer, and don't try to think you know it if you have not actually done it, because it's
Mm-hmm.
very different when you're on the management side. So there's that. You should always be up to date on regulations. If you live in a tourist town, you need to know what's going on with that, regardless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Regardless if it's an STR owner or short-term rental owner or a regular homeowner, you should know those things. Um, you should know what kind of loan they're dealing with and have a little knowledge on the different types of loan products that you can recommend for them. I think I covered quite a bit, but definitely no. So I'll give you an example. I've been in this space for many, many years and really thought I knew my stuff. And then we purchased a short-term rental in Florida, and I didn't think it was important for my agent to know anything about short-term rentals because I knew it all. And that was a huge mistake. Huge
How
mistake.
so?
Because I didn't understand the neighborhoods. I didn't understand what people in Florida wanted. I didn't understand homestead. I didn't understand insurance. Like all of the things that is particular to that state, I didn't know. I've never lived there. So I was taking my New Hampshire experience and putting it in
Mm-hmm.
Florida, and it just did not work. So the agent knowledge is really great when you're dealing with that. And like I said, if you don't have it, maybe become friendly with a property manager
Mm-hmm.
and see if they can work with your buyer too.
That makes sense. So basically, it's just really important to team up with someone who already has that experience and attempt to learn from them too.
Exactly. And you want to be careful in this space not to give too much investment advice, because that's not what we are supposed to be doing. So you
Mm-hmm.
can give them resources for them to go through, and but you need to just make sure that you're not giving them actual hard numbers where that would be considered investment advice.
Got you. Got you. And you had mentioned insurance. Is there special insurance if you're short-term renting a property?
There is, yes. You need to
Wow.
have either a rider with your policy, or there are insurance companies that specialize in short-term rentals, which if you have something like a pool, you should really go with some company that's going to protect you in that situation. So somebody can't just rent and have homeowners insurance and not have that on there. So your buyer should absolutely get those numbers before they close,
Mm-hmm.
because that can change. They can have, another $200 bill a month they weren't anticipating.
Right. There's a lot to this and educating the buyer. So I think it'd be important to mention to any new agents listening, this is definitely a great option, but don't leap into it.
Yes.
There's just way too much. I hate using the word liability, but there just seems to be so many moving parts to this that it
Yes.
would be kind of silly or irresponsible to jump in without doing all of your homework ahead of time and team up with someone. Like, even if you could shadow an agent who is already in that space, or like you mentioned earlier, the property manager, that seems like a good option.
Yeah, and there's a lot of incidental costs that come with owning a home like that. When sometimes people will want to know what the light bill is, which you should get that information, but it's going to be very different when they're utilizing it as a guest home, because guests turn on every light, where in your own home you might be a little more conservative. Guests will take the hottest shower, where you may be more conservative in your home. So you have to be able to let your buyer know that those costs may change because the numbers just might not work. And
Hmm.
that's the biggest error that I see, is the numbers just don't work. The areas become saturated where we are now, so
Hmm.
it's a little tougher to actually make money on a rental. And if that's their focus, you have to be careful in getting them into the right property. So you should pull um, their light bill and try to figure those things out. If they're buying a house that is just a couple that lives there, and they plan on making it sleep 10 people and adding a hot tub, but they don't think about the light bill, they could end up looking at what, $200 light bill going up to $600-700 a month. Then you add in the insurance on top of
Right.
that, and plowing that you have to have, hot tub maintenance, the cleaning fees, the supplies. It can all add up and chip away at their bottom line.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important to counsel that buyer to go forward on their own due diligence with the town
Exactly.
as well, and not with just one person. I myself have called this happened, what, maybe a year or so ago, year and a half. I called the town and asked a question and got an answer that was really the opposite of what I thought it was going to be. And then my buyer called and happened to get that same person and got the same answer that I did. And when I then reached out to other people, they said, that is their opinion. That is not the rule that's going on right now. So like the whole deal almost fell apart.
Yep.
If it wasn't for a couple local agents who were extremely knowledgeable in that space, and they intervened and called the town and got the right person on the phone, who then talked to my buyer. But yeah, that was a nightmare. So you just really have to focus on your due diligence. There's no room for laziness in this space.
True, true. And if you're dealing with a town that is going through some regulations, but they haven't actually settled on anything yet, you really have to get the most recent town um, minutes and look them over and kind of see where it's heading, or have your buyer go for those.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm in that space, so I keep up with it. But if you have a homeowners association, you need to look at their most recent meeting and find out if there's anything going on with that, because it would be awful to have a buyer purchase a home to rent out, and then 3 months in they're told you can't do it anymore,
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
which
I
happens
mean,
all the time.
yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, at least to me, when I'm dealing with a buyer, I I have told people many times, like, I don't think this is the right property. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, they're grown adults that can make their own decisions.
Right.
But I'm always focused on what we originally spoke about, kind of their dream and goal list, right? And that can change as you're out there navigating, one showing after another.
Yes.
Um, but when it comes to the investment properties, the thing that I like to always talk about is that the buyers moving forward, do they have the capital, or are they counting on X number of dollars every month to help cover their mortgage and the taxes and the insurance? Because the, to me, not that it's my business, but I kind of make it my business with my clients a little bit. Like, they need a buffer.
Hmm.
There's no guarantee that's going to rent out every weekend or
Right.
6 times a month. Like, what if you have 6 months of nothing? Are you stable? You have enough liquid cash? You can keep everything going. I don't want to have a client who's stressed out and tight with money. And so I'll have those hard conversations just because in the end I want my client happy, and a year from now I want them to still be so happy they purchased that property.
Yes, it's very true. Very true. Most people that come and buy the second home have some disposable income, so they're usually, if you're tight on money and you don't have that buffer, you should not be getting in that space because
Yeah.
there's just a lot that goes into it, and the initial setup of a home is very, very expensive. So most of them do kind of have that disposable income, um, and but they also need to realize that we don't have 100% occupancy, and unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches and courses and all of the stuff that I see out there that are really selling this as a passive income, get rich quick
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when I have someone come to me like that and I have to kind of pop that balloon a little bit, sometimes they'll get angry, but it's true. And
Yeah.
I'm here to make sure that the investment you make is going to work for you and is a wise one. And so I kind of tell them to throw all that out the window. We're
Yep.
not, in my market anyway, in a market where that's going to happen. So that can be a little tough. That's a harder thing to deal with these days, I think,
Mm-hmm.
than I dealt with several years ago because there's just so many people saying that, set it and forget it and you can make 100 grand a year. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and the more saturated an area gets with short-term rentals, the more properties that are sitting empty and people's dreams are crashing
Yep.
on
Yeah.
their
And
get rich quick.
right. And then if you have an owner that, they're buying a property on the water because they want to use it in July and August,
Yeah.
and they also want to make an income, that's going to be tough because July and August would be the months where you would make your income. So, I always tell them you have to make your money in the 4 hottest months of the year if that's what you're in this for, because that's the peak months for, our area. And any agent in a tourist area will know when their peak months are,
Mhm. Mhm.
regardless of if you travel or not. But you'll know which months you see more traffic in town, which
Yeah.
months you can't get
Yeah.
into a restaurant. We kind of know our area for that. But
Yeah, for sure. For sure. How do you counsel your investors on the setup after the purchase? Because I know you're just super hands on
yeah,
in all phases.
I have, I'll give them a list of what they need, their basic inventory for the house. Tell them what kind, types of furniture they should be purchasing. I always try to have them go to local suppliers if they can, who um, we always want to support local if we can, and just step by step with them. It's such a process that, um, when they first buy that house that day, I still have a buyer that bought from you that's still not set up. And I think we're going on 4 months,
Mm.
because I walked in there and was like, oh, you need this, you need this, you need this. So it's just having a lens from a guest and
Mhm. Mhm.
being practical about it. But I do have an inventory list that I'll send out to people, and that can help them get started. And then it's just kind of going back through the house and checking and seeing if they've gotten all of the details.
Well, that's a great service that you add, and definitely it shows your value that you're bringing to the table for your clients. And any new agents or agents in general that are listening, I think that it's really important to realize that there's a lot of layers to this. So this isn't going to be an area for yourself that you can shortcut, not if you're going to bring the appropriate amount of value to your client.
Yeah.
What do you think the biggest challenges will be for an agent wanting to sort of add this specialty?
I think that dealing with local regulations is probably one of the biggest challenges right now, and dealing with local people who are very opposed to short-term rentals. And so navigating that, for me, I got very involved in that, and it really burnt me out. It's a kind of a negative, hostile environment when you're
Mm-hmm.
in the thick of it. And if you have to know this stuff, but you also have to keep your skin a little bit thicker with that. You really need to know some different lending products and understand what they are. For example, a lot of people that are buying these properties are using a loan type called DSCR, which a lot of other agents don't understand it. So when you're writing an offer and you're putting down a loan product that they don't understand, and
Mm-hmm.
especially the competitive market that we've been in, it's important to know what you're dealing with and educate the other agent on what that loan product is, so their seller is not scared of it if they don't see a term they're familiar with, or an agent doesn't see that. Uh,
Yeah, and oftentimes it's not even necessarily the seller who's scared of it, it's the list agent who
exactly.
goes forward to their seller and says, I don't know what this is. This isn't conventional, blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, there's a whole negative emotional slant going
It,
on with
it,
the
yeah.
offer.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing, one of the more difficult things has been for me, is I do get buyers that, like I said, have disposable income, and they really want the property, and they get emotionally involved, and they're willing
Mm,
to throw any number out there to win. And
mm,
that can be scary because you're seeing that go up, and you know, there'll be negative equity for a long time if they keep offering that money. And
mm-hmm.
so having that ability to keep their emotions in check when they're purchasing has been hard for me, because you want so bad for them to get what they want, but you have to be their voice of reason when things get out of hand, especially in bidding wars, and um, which happens still to this day in that industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that other hat we wear called a therapist.
Yes. Yeah, and you want to make sure they're balancing, what they're putting down for a down payment. They still have income left over, money left over to furnish that home. And so, when emotions get high, that's our job as a realtor, to be the voice of reason for them and help
Right.
them make the best decision.
Yeah. It's like when I talk to first time home buyers, I spend a lot of time on the money topic.
Mhm.
Um, you know, part of our job's knowing how much they have to put down, and in addition to, goals and dreams and all that jazz. But like, I want my first time home buyer to have money in their bank account after purchasing so they can handle repairs, or the
Right.
hot water tank goes out, or there's a problem with the septic. Um, and so I do spend a lot of time on that. And I think that it's not so different in this
Right.
situation with
Right.
that investor. I have had clients purchase second or third homes and want them for investment property, and then basically tell me that, well, I'll need this to cover the mortgage.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. I don't think it's time to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because one thing goes wrong, they're going to be very upset.
Yes, very true. Very true. And there, you know, I wouldn't want to scare a new agent because this probably sounds overwhelming to somebody who's never dealt with it before. You just need to have your resources at your fingertips
Mm-hmm.
and direct them where they want to go.
Yeah.
And
And
there's so much online stuff that they can find. You know, if they want to know nightly rate, there's, resources for that. And um, so there's ways to find the information. You just have to help them with it. And they do. They rely solely on you because one thing we haven't addressed is most of these buyers come from out of state. They are not
mm-hmm.
familiar with our area besides maybe having visited a few times. So having your local knowledge and resources is very helpful for them. You know, if they're looking at a house that's perfect but might need a new roof, that's scary for them because they don't know local contractors and we do. So we can help,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
reassure them that we have contacts for them that can help them get through, whatever repairs or whatnot need to happen on a home.
Right, right. Yeah, good point. Now, is there much to managing the dual focus of short term rentals with, say, traditional real estate?
I prefer managing over the real estate facet of it. Like I said, I personally just deal with buyers who want to buy a short-term rental. So I don't, handle a lot of transactions.
Mm-hmm.
The management side, yes, there's a lot that goes into managing. And sadly, because I see the requirement of not being a real estate kind of has been removed, real estate agent has been removed in the way that people approach managing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I see it all the time on these groups where anybody's jumping in and managing a property. And it makes me a little sad because that's a big responsibility to take on. Having other guests come into somebody's property is a huge responsibility. And if you don't know what you're doing, a lot can go wrong.
Mm.
And so there's pricing, there's listing optimization, there's photos, there's, the management of before and after guests, keeping guests happy. There's a lot of scams out there from guests, and they're very smart. They know how to navigate, getting full refunds and whatnot. So having a manager that knows what they're doing, but I don't think anyone should step into that blindly on another person's property unless they've done, have some research and are willing to learn a few things.
Yeah, that's definitely great advice. Stephanie, I want to thank you for being here today and being willing to share your experiences and your education with our listeners. Super valuable.
Thank you very much.
And how can our listeners find you online?
I have a website called thecohostcompanion.com, and that is where I offer resources for owners that want to get started in the short-term rental space.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Listeners, thank you for tuning in today. Don't be shy about reaching out and sharing your shit with us. We're here to help. You can find us on social media, all the platforms at Real AF Program. Make sure you subscribe to our Spotify channel so you get updated every time we drop a new podcast. And check out our website at realafprogram.com.